Also, I've seen you use a lot of items for pork. So can we talk about, I don't know if it's a fruit that you're using that basically looks like pork. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's called jackfruit, and it's a tropical fruit. It's huge, like this huge green thing. But the texture, it shreds like it's pork. So you can like shred it. And then what it does is it absorbs all the flavors of the marinade that you cook it in. The texture, because of the shredding element to it, it makes a very good substitute for pork.
Hola y bienvenidos. Welcome to Molé Mama, Cooking with Love. You're about to join us for our weekly adventure where we chat with chefs and foodies and artists for helping us to connect and learn from each other. And please visit our YouTube channel where you can learn how to make amazing, authentic Mexican food, at least according to my mama. You can learn to make enchiladas, crunchy tacos, flour tortillas, queso y chorizo fundido, and so many other wonderful recipes. And if you like what you hear today on our podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. We love hearing from you, who else we should be talking to, what other things we should be talking about. Well, I am delighted with who today's guest is. Let me tell you a little bit about her. If you can, and you're near your phone, run to Instagram and look at Dora's table. So she is doing authentic vegan Mexican food. It's amazing. I'm telling you, you're going to get so hungry. And I don't know how she does it because everything looks fabulous. And I'm a cheese lover, so I want to hear more from her, and we will in a minute. But let me tell you a little bit about this phenomenal woman. Dora is the founder, recipe developer, and photographer at Dora's Table, Mero Molé. Born and raised in Mexico and a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America in New York, which is a really big deal, she adopted a vegan, plant-based diet to take control of her health. She is passionate about sharing her knowledge and teaching the Hispanic community all about being vegan. In 2016, she published her first book, Vegan Tamales Unwrapped. And with that, welcome, Dora.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. I love all the creativity in your cooking. It's just amazing that you're taking these traditional recipes and making them plant-based. So I'm so excited to ask you a whole bunch of questions. But I think for our listeners, it would be a great place to start would be to learn more about your childhood. I know that you grew up with parents that owned a restaurant, so you have this very deep connection to food. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my parents, and they still own a restaurant in Mexico, and they opened it up when I was about 6 years old. So when that happened, my mother stopped cooking at home because she was like, "Why am I going to keep cooking at home? We're just going to go eat at the restaurant." So almost all of our meals were at the restaurant. We just practically lived there. We after school we would do our homework there. We would stay there and then have dinner and then come back home. And so I grew up in the restaurant business, just kind of just living there, living the restaurant life, and listening to my dad, talk about like the needs of the employees and the things that were going on. So it just kind of is like woven into the fabric of our lives.
That is so fantastic. And can you also tell us, how did you end up becoming a chef?
I actually didn't learn how to cook when I was little. I wish I had one of those, like, my grandmother taught me how to cook stories, and like all my life I cooked. It's actually quite the opposite. Be- because my mother stopped cooking at home, you know, my like last interaction with like food at home was at like 6 years old, and then the food at the restaurant, just like gets served to you. And my father wouldn't let us go back into the kitchen, because obviously we were children, and like a professional kitchen is not a place for children. And then when we got older, it's a male dominated area, so it was just like, just trying to keep you safe, like you can't go back there. But then after high school, I was a missionary for a year, and I lived with nuns doing the missionary work. And one of my chores was to help out in the kitchen. So I was like, wow, I really like this. And it all just kind of clicked together. Like I lived the restaurant life, but I had never just like participated in it fully. So when I learned how to cook, that's when I learned how to cook really when I became a missionary. It just kind of all clicked together. And I was like, I want to do this. Like, it just made so much sense to keep on participating in my family's legacy.
That is an amazing story. So you learned from the nuns. I love that. And so culinary school. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That's fantastic. Congratulations. You went to an amazing school.
Yes, my father, he wanted to send me to the best school, and it was a bit of a struggle for them, to get because we paid for it. He paid for it out of his own pocket. There was no scholarships, there was no financial aid, and Mexico, my parents are like middle class. They have their own restaurant, but it's still a peso. It's not, like dollars. So they did like a big effort so that I could go to the best culinary school that there was, and I did, and it was just an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful to have been able to go and have the experience that the CIA has to offer. In the beginning, it was a little bit difficult because I had never been so far away from home. And I was so confident. I was like, my parents live on the border. So I was like, I know, I know how the United States is, but I did not know. I did not know. There is a period of adaptation, just I'm fluent in English, but just people's like mannerisms and like social references that I didn't get, and most of the time I would just be like with a big question mark on my face. I'm like, I do not understand what they're saying. But it was very, very amazing to be at a school that has such a diverse group of students from everywhere in the world. And everybody just kind of shares like their own experiences and their own cuisine, and that's really cool.
So you went to this amazing school, and I think that I heard that you were working in a restaurant and then became a sous chef, and then your life kind of changed. So can you tell our listeners what happened next?
Yeah, so after school, everybody, you graduate and you think you're going to like dominate the whole cooking world. But of course, it doesn't work that way. So I started working at a hotel in Washington, D.C., and I worked there for several years. And I worked at another restaurant in California. So we moved to California. And it was just, I was at that point where I was like on the borderline of becoming a sous chef. Like I was so close, and it was such a big milestone. And then I found out that I was pregnant. And my husband and I, we were really happy about it, even though, because I always wanted to have a lot of children. And I was 25 and we was really young, but I was like, oh, we're so happy. But at the same time, it kind of felt like the opportunity. I did get offered a job as a sous chef, and I had to turn it down because I wanted to be there for my child. And my husband also works in the food service industry, so it was going to be so difficult for both of us to work, 10 to 12 hours a day, nights, weekends. So I decided that I was going to stay home to take care of our child and, just see how that went. So it was a little bit hard for me because it just kind of felt like my dreams were just kind of being cut short. But at the same time, I was so happy that I was pregnant and that I was going to have a child.
And I think that's a decision point that a lot of women, right? A lot of us face. I know that when I was working, I had to stay working. I wish I could have done something else, but I couldn't find a path to do both. You found a path to do both. So please continue and tell us how this evolved, and now it's Dora's Table, and it's this amazing vegan plant-based blog, and you've done so many things. So please tell us, how did that emerge? You're about to be a sous chef and you're having a baby, and then
Yeah, so I stayed home and I was so frustrated because it just kind of felt like, what was the point of going to this amazing culinary school if I was just going to cook baby food? So, and I was so frustrated. But then I was living in Maryland at the time, and I met this woman. We were in like a mommy group, and she was starting like a farm in her like her backyard, and she had like this, Maryland has a lot of like wooded areas. So the back of her house, she was turning it into like a little farm, and she told me that she had started a blog. I did not even know what a blog was. I'm like, what's that? She's like, oh, and then she like tells me like what it is, and she shows it to me, and I was like, I want to do that. I totally have to do that. And I did. I started it. My son, I think, was almost one when I started it, and it wasn't vegan. It was Dora's, called Dora's Table, but it wasn't a vegan blog. It was just a regular food blog. But it became like an outlet for me to be able to cook for other people still, to kind of showcase what I learned and my experiences and like my culinary knowledge. And it was really an outlet, because being a stay-at-home mom can sometimes be very hard and very lonely, because you're with your child all day and you're not really talking to adults or like interacting with other people. So it was a very, very good way for me to just keep kind of working on myself and my aspirations. And then during this time, I had a health problem, and I kept going to doctors and kept going to doctors. And, I tried a bunch of medications and nothing would help me. And I was getting so frustrated. And somebody recommended that I see this documentary called Forks Over Knives.
I've seen it.
And I really didn't want to see it, because I was a meat eater. My parents' restaurant is a steakhouse. I loved cheese. Cheese was like my number one thing. I loved like all those huge, like French stinky cheeses.
So do I. I love those so much.
Yeah. So when my friend was like, you should watch it, I'm like, I'm not watching this. I'm not going to watch it. But she was so insistent that I just had to watch it so she would stop bothering me about it. And I watched it and I'm like, I don't know about this. But I tried it. I tried it for a couple weeks going vegan, and I kind of didn't see any difference, so I went back to eating meat like I did before. But then my health problems continued, and I decided to try it again for a longer period of time. I think this time it was like 2 or 3 months, and my health improved so much that I stopped going to doctors to give me medication. Like just going on a plant-based diet just improved my health so much that I decided that I was going to stay vegan.
That is remarkable. Food is medicine. It really is. And I have to know, how did you give up cheese? 'Cause I like
It was really
vegan
hard.
food that I'm like, yeah, I definitely really like that, but I just couldn't live without cheese.
It was my transition into veganism. It was kind of gradual. Like I started, and then I would still have like one day off, because I was doing it for health reasons, not really for animal reasons. I still took like one day where I would eat whatever I wanted. But then with time, like continuing to be vegan, you kind of just your taste buds change. Like now, if I was to have cheese, I would probably think it was like too fatty or too salty, because your taste buds really do change. So over time, I came to realize that I wasn't really enjoying. I was enjoying the taste of cheese, but not the way it made me feel.
Okay, so how long? Was that like years or like how long?
No, three
Really?
months.
Really?
If you go vegan for 3 months, your taste buds will change. And as a chef, I want to tell you, all the chefs out there, it will enhance your taste buds. You're going to taste things that you're like, I couldn't taste it before, because you were eating things that were so saturated with salt and fat that you weren't really tasting what things taste like.
Okay, because I have a really dear friend who also made me watch Forks and Knives. So it's very similar. She's like hitting me over the head with it until I had to. And I'm like, dairy. I grew up on a dairy farm, so my mom would make homemade cheese and homemade butter
Oh.
and ice cream. So I'm like, oh, I just the dairy. Oh, I could do the rest of it. Okay, you're making this very tempting, Dora, for me to experiment. I'll have to see what happens. Now, like I said earlier, your recipes are amazing, and so we've been talking about cheese. So what do you use instead of cheese? Because a lot of your recipes look creamy, and I know there are plant-based cheese options out there for people. So can you talk to that a little bit?
Yes, I had a hard time with like the vegan cheese options because I loved cheese so much. I just felt that they all were not good. you know, I just thought they were not good. But so what I use in most of my dishes is I make nut sauces.
Oh,
So kind of, like when you make chiles en nogada, you make that sauce out of the walnuts and it becomes like this creamy like white sauce. So it's the same concept except I mostly use almonds. A lot of vegans like to use cashews. So you blend the nuts with maybe water and garlic and a little bit of like plant-based milk and like seasonings and you blend it. You have to have a high powered blender. You can do it in a regular blender, but it doesn't work as well. And it becomes a cream sauce, but it's made out of nuts.
very interesting. Okay, like I think maybe I just needed to talk to you. I hope our listeners are, but honestly, you're really piquing my interest in experimenting more. Because okay. And all right, so what do you do for also I've seen you use a lot of items for pork. So can we talk about, I don't know if it's a fruit that you're using that basically looks like pork. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's called jackfruit and it's a tropical fruit. It's huge, it's like this huge green thing. And when it's mature, when it's sweet, it tastes like juicy fruit. It's so good. But when it's green, it's immature. It doesn't taste like anything. It just like it's green fruit, but the texture, it shreds like it's pork. So you can like shred it. So what vegans are doing is they're getting the jackfruit and you can buy it already canned. You have to look for green jackfruit in brine or water, but it needs to be green. And then what it does is it absorbs all the flavors of the marinade that you cook it in. So you don't really taste, all you taste is like the flavors of like the chiles or the spices that you're cooking it with. But the texture, because of the shredding element to it, it makes a very good substitute for pork.
I saw your tamales, your mole tamales with jackfruit, and I was like, that looks like pork. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, those tamales have fooled some, like non-vegan eaters because they're pretty good.
That I looked at him and went, really? Really? So, okay, so that's remarkable that these options exist and that you're exploring them. And I love that you're doing it for our culture because I know there's such a huge diabetic, especially diabetic. It's an epidemic in our culture. So it's fabulous that you're exploring all these plant-based recipes and sharing them with us. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And I actually started because my blog was not vegan, and I became vegan, but I hadn't like made the jump to turning the blog into being vegan because I was kind of scared too. But at the same time, my mother was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which, like you mentioned, is very common in the Hispanic community. And I kept telling her that she should, like go vegan and she should go vegan. And she was just, she'd be like, yeah, 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 I'm never going to do it. So I would try to cook for her. And I don't know why I hadn't thought about it. I don't know. I would try to cook her like veggie burgers or like, would I try to cook her like a Vietnamese spring roll. There's the ones that are made with like rice paper and like tofu inside and veggies. And she's just like, "What is this? What are you trying to give me?" And I think she looked at me and she just tells me, "Can't you make something more Mexican?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like, why didn't I think about this before? So then I started making vegan versions of all our favorite, Mexican dishes. And then my mom was kind of willing to at least try it, and then that's when it all just clicked. I'm like, of course I should just change my whole blog to be vegan Mexican, because if my mom, who was like totally rejecting the idea of becoming vegan, was willing to try it, then how many more people are going to be willing to try it? And being vegan is so beneficial for your health and for the environment and for the animals. So there's a lot of things that come with it as well, that you discover it along the way. So that's kind of how I changed everything to be, vegan Mexican.
What a beautiful story that the way it kind of organically happened for you with your mom. That's fantastic. Now, has she become vegan or is she just still?
No, she's not vegan.
Not
She's
yet.
she's like stubborn. She's not vegan. She's like, if you cook for me, I probably will. I'm like, well, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Yeah, several years ago was asked to cook for this event for Virgin Sports, and I was kind of coerced into it by a friend. And then after I said yes, she was like, "Okay, and I need almost everything to be vegan. It has to be gluten free." And I'm like, "Wait, wait, wait! I don't know how to cook that way." So I had to like experiment, and I made my mole, and I used gluten free flour that like escaped from the pan while I was trying to fry. I mean, it was just a mess. But I did come up with a vegan ceviche recipe where I
Mhm.
used oyster mushrooms and jicama. And I had people swearing, like, there's seafood in this. I'm like, no, there's not. I was really surprised. It was just luck. I just kept trying different things and it worked. But, so I think I can lean more that way eventually. I just need, like I said, if there was a vegan dairy, you know, label, that would be me. I could probably do that fine. So, but I know that I wouldn't be reaping the benefits of being plant based. So we'll have to see how it comes out for me. So enough about me. So you have a cookbook. Do you want to talk about I think you have more than one cookbook actually. Can you tell
I
us?
have one.
You have one.
It's an ebook. It's on available on Amazon. It's called Vegan Tamales Unwrapped, and it's available in English and Spanish. And it has over 18 different vegan tamal recipes, and they're savory and sweet. So I kind of came up with the idea because it was like almost Christmas time, and I'm like, oh, I want to make tamales, and I just had all these ideas of how many tamales I wanted to make and the different kinds and how I could veganize them, and I'm like, why don't I just put them all in a book?
That's fantastic. And are you working on any other cookbooks?
Right now, I'm working on this project that's called Our Vegan Mexico. And I asked people from all over Mexico and the United States to submit their recipes. And so we're going, and I've already started publishing them on the blog. There's going to be 32 recipes, each one representing a different Mexican state. So by the time I'm done publishing the 32 recipes, I'm going to put all the recipes in an ebook that will be available for free on my site.
That is fantastic. I love that. I will be getting that for sure. What a beautiful idea. That is wonderful. Now, you have a lot of recipes on your site. How many do you have? Do you know?
I think I have close to 200 probably.
Okay. And the photographs, you take all of your own photographs, correct?
Yes. Yes. I'm
Wonderful.
self-taught.
They're gorgeous. Just stunning. And we haven't talked yet about your videos. Your Instagram videos are amazing. I just bought a dear friend of mine a molcajete. And so I sent him a note with his molcajete saying, go to Dora's Table Instagram feed and look up her directions on how to cure your molcajete. It's the best one I've seen. Uh,
Oh, thank you.
so are you making those by yourself or do you have help?
Yeah, I make those by myself as well. I have 3 children, so I try to work when they're asleep and when they're napping. And then on the weekends, my husband will help me out and watch them for a couple of hours. And that's how I record my videos and I take my pictures.
Okay, that's impressive, I guess. All right, that's fantastic. So do you have a favorite recipe that you've developed? It's like your favorite.
My favorite one is the homemade vegan chorizo.
Oh,
Yes, it's a little time consuming. It takes a little bit of time to make, but it is so worth it because it tastes just like chorizo. It's chorizo. And then I make a huge batch of it. And then I make tortas con chorizo. I make huevos con chorizo. And I mean, tofu huevos. I use tofu instead of eggs. Like tofu and chorizo, papas con chorizo. I'll put it in tacos. I'll put it with pasta. I'll put it on everything.
okay. I have to look for that recipe too. Is that tofu based? Is that nut based?
It's a mixture of tofu and mushrooms. And then the seasoning sauce is basically the same sauce, the traditional sauce that's used to flavor the pork. But instead, I saute the mushrooms and I saute the tofu and then I mix it with the seasoning sauce and then saute it again. So it's chorizo.
Yum. Yeah, because that's something else that I couldn't give up. Okay, see, you're like taking away all the obstacles that I have in my head about why I couldn't be plant based. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So since you've started your blog and it is such a treasure, it really is. What's been some of the biggest surprises that you've encountered along the way?
I think the biggest surprise was that I could actually turn it into a business. When I started, I was doing it because I loved cooking and because I needed an outlet. It was kind of like my hobby, but I never really thought that it could be my full time job. I never really thought that, I could make money doing it. So that was, along the way, I met other bloggers who were doing it. And that even now, there's bloggers that this is their business, that this is their full time job, and they're doing so well. And it's something that I couldn't even imagine was possible.
Well, congratulations. That's outstanding that you are doing that. Very well done. And you're passionate about what you're doing. It's just, I love stories like this. Love it. So it's just wonderful. And has there been any challenges along the way?
I think the biggest challenge is that our growth has been slow because of my lack of time. Because I'm still a stay-at-home mom. Like I watch my children, well, my little one during the day, and the two older ones go to school, and you know, I this is not my full-time job. My full-time job is that I'm a mom. So I try to do my work whenever the kids are asleep or whenever, somebody else is watching them. So I can't dedicate, 40 hours a week to growing this. So the growth is slow. It's slower than I would like it to be. So that's one of the biggest challenges.
Okay. And I want for you to tell all of our listeners about your semi-finalist position for a really big award. I went and voted for you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm actually so happy about this because it's an award. There's called the Bien Premios. It's happening in Mexico City, and it's a festival that's going on to celebrate and promote all the companies, chefs, coaches, nutritionists in Mexico that are promoting health in Mexico. So I was so surprised to get nominated because my blog is in English, but it also has a version in Spanish. But the majority of my audience is in the United States. I know, like, I have a small audience in Mexico. I didn't think it was that big, but it's really cool to be recognized in my own country, for the work that I'm doing.
It's outstanding, Dora. And so tell our listeners how they go and vote.
Well, I will send you a link because I don't remember what the link is. But you go into the link and it's going to be in Spanish. But you have to go into the link and then it'll ask you to vote. So you have to look for the category, and my category is chef. And then you just look for Dora's Table on there and you vote for me.
Yeah, it was really easy. And I did mine in Spanish, so I was kind of excited. My Spanish is great. But there is an option on Google to just translate the page for anybody that's listening and doesn't speak Spanish. It's really easy for you to go and vote for Dora. But it's fantastic that, like you said, that you were recognized and that you're in it. But your recipes are really inspiring. Like I said, you are tempting a farm girl to really look. It's really,
That's good. You just got to try it.
yes, yes, definitely. So, is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
I just want to share with you that going vegan, like, it seems like it's going to be the hardest thing in the world, or that you can never do it, or that it is just so weird because you haven't never cooked tofu or seitan or any of the other things that vegans cook. But the basis and kind of like my inspiration for my recipes is traditional Mexican cuisine, which now is pretty meat heavy. But, before the conquest, the indigenous people of Mexico ate mostly plants with a little bit of game, um, animals, just kind of. It wasn't until the Spanish came that, pork and cows and like all these other animal products came into our diet. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as easy as, like bean and calabacitas tacos. It can be as easy as tortilla soup, but instead of chicken, you add calabacitas and beans to it. And it could still have tortilla strips, and you can make like a vegan crema. Like, you can still enjoy the beautiful flavors and the richness of Mexican cuisine without hurting any animals, or without hurting your body, or without hurting the environment. So I would ask you to consider it, even if it's eating less meat, not giving it up completely. I think it would be beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would. That's beautiful, and I agree with that. So you're making me at least think like what you did. Like I can do more meatless days a week. So like it's the cheese. It's just still the cheese.
Yeah.
But I will let you know how it goes. And I also we haven't even talked about ice cream, but I have a whole thing about ice cream too. A whole thing.
Oh, I love ice cream.
So what do you do? What ice cream do you eat?
There's this great brand. It's called Nada Mu. So it's Nadamoo. And they're based in Austin. And they make the most delicious vegan ice cream. It's coconut based. So if you have an allergy to coconut, that's not for you. But that one is my absolute favorite. It's not too sweet. It's just perfect, and they have so many different flavors. It's delicious.
Okay, like I said, you're just taking away those barriers. It's like, oh, my friend Lorraine, I'm gonna have to tell her about our conversation. She has to listen to the show. She's gonna be so excited. This is my friend that we watch Forks and Knives, so she's gonna be like, yes. So, Dora, it has absolutely been a delight to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wealth of wisdom and helping us all be healthier while still embracing our rich Mexican heritage and culinary history. It's fantastic. You're doing great work.
Oh, thank
Just
you.
amazing. And we will continue to watch you. And like I said, I'll let you know how my plant-based efforts go. I'll stay in touch. And thanks again for being with us today.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to all of your listeners.
It's been wonderful. All right, for all of our listeners, thank you so much for listening to us. Remember to add the most important ingredient to every recipe you make your love. And as my mama always said to me as we said our goodbyes, que Dios te bendiga. May God bless you. Thank you for tuning in to Molé Mama Cooking with Love.